I watched through my frosted window as the entire neighborhood went dark, streetlights flickering out one by one like falling dominoes. The January ice storm had finally knocked out the power in our quiet Riverside subdivision in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I knew from experience we would be without electricity for at least 24 hours. I grabbed my emergency kit from the hall closet and pulled out the space heater I kept specifically for situations like this. The small ceramic unit had been a birthday gift from my sister 3 years ago, and it had saved me through more than one winter outage. I set up the heater in my living room, angling it toward my favorite recliner where I planned to ride out the storm with a book and some blankets. The natural gas still worked, so I could at least make coffee on the stove. Small victories. I was actually settling in, getting comfortable with the situation, when I heard the sharp knock on my front door. Through the peephole, I saw her. Brenda Patterson, president of the Riverside Estates Homeowners Association, and the bane of my existence for the past 2 years since I moved into this development. She stood on my porch in a puffy pink jacket, her perfectly styled blonde hair somehow immune to the freezing rain, clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. I opened the door a crack. "Brenda, what can I do for you?" "Adam Greenfield, I need to speak with you about emergency protocols," she said, already trying to peer past me into my house. "The HOA board has implemented temporary measures during this outage, and I am conducting wellness checks on all residents." "I am fine. Thanks for checking." I started to close the door. Her hand shot out, stopping it. "I need to come inside and verify that you are not violating any safety codes. The board has given me authority to inspect all properties during this emergency." "That is not how any of this works, Brenda." Article 7, Section 4 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that board members may enter properties during declared emergencies to ensure community safety. I sighed. This was typical Brenda. She twisted every rule and regulation to suit whatever power trip she was on that particular week. Last month, she had tried to fine me $200 because my garbage cans were supposedly visible from the street 15 minutes past the allowable time. Never mind that the garbage truck had been late. Fine, but make it quick. It is freezing out here. I stepped aside. She swept past me, water dripping from her boots onto my hardwood floor. Her eyes immediately locked onto the space heater glowing warmly in my living room. "Is that a portable heating device?" she asked, her voice taking on that sharp, accusatory tone I had come to dread. "It is a space heater. For heat, during the ice storm. Those are prohibited under HOA guidelines." She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "You cannot be serious. Article 12 clearly prohibits high-risk heating devices that could pose a fire hazard to the community. Brenda, the power is out. It is 20 degrees outside. This is a certified safe space heater." She ignored me, circling the device like a shark. "I am going to have to confiscate this for the duration of the emergency. You will receive a formal citation, and we will discuss the fine at the next board meeting." "You are not taking my heater. I have the authority during declared emergencies." She bent down and unplugged it. "Brenda, do not touch that." But she was already wrapping the cord around the base, lifting it with both hands. "You will thank me when this entire development does not burn down. I will store this safely until power is restored." I stepped in front of her, blocking her path to the door. "Put it back, right now." "Are you threatening me, Adam? Because I will add that to my report. Threatening an HOA board member is grounds for additional fines and possible legal action." The absurdity of the situation hit me. Here I was, a 34-year-old man who worked in IT consulting, arguing with a 50-something HOA president about a space heater during an ice storm. But I also knew that if I physically tried to take it back, she would absolutely twist it into some kind of assault claim. "This is theft," I said, keeping my voice level. "This is enforcement of community standards. Good evening, Adam. Stay warm." She shouldered past me and out the door, carrying my heater into the freezing night. I stood there in my doorway, watching her load it into the back of her white Lexus SUV. The entire encounter had lasted maybe 5 minutes. I pulled out my phone and called the non-emergency police line. "Cincinnati Police, how can I help you? I need to report a theft. My HOA president just came into my home and took my space heater." There was a pause. "Your HOA president?" "Yes. She claimed she had the right to confiscate it during the power outage, but she just stole my property." "Sir, is this a civil HOA matter or an actual theft?" "She took my property without permission. That is theft." Another pause. "Okay, let me get some information from you." I spent the next 10 minutes explaining the situation to a dispatcher who sounded increasingly confused about whether this was actually a police matter. Eventually, she said an officer would come by when one was available, but given the ice storm and multiple accidents throughout the city, it might be a while. I hung up and immediately texted my neighbor, Marcus Chen, who lived 3 houses down. Marcus and I had bonded over our mutual frustration with Brenda's increasingly authoritarian interpretation of HOA rules. "You will not believe what just happened," I typed, then explained the whole situation. His response came quickly. "Are you serious? She took your heater, drove off with it." I called the police. "Good. She is out of control. She tried to find me last week because my son left his bike on the front lawn for 2 hours. I bundled up in every layer I owned and settled in for what was going to be a very cold night. Without the space heater, my house temperature started dropping steadily. By midnight, I could see my breath inside. I piled every blanket I owned onto my bed and tried to sleep, but mostly I just lay there shivering and fuming about the injustice of it all. The next morning, the ice storm had passed, but the power was still out. I made coffee on the gas stove and checked my phone. Several messages from other neighbors in the community group chat were discussing the outage. Then, I saw something interesting. A message from Teresa Williams, who lived on Maple Court. "Did anyone else have Brenda come by last night and take things? She took our battery-operated lanterns and said they were a fire hazard. My husband is furious." I sat up straighter, coffee forgotten. I typed back immediately. "She took my space heater, said it was prohibited during the emergency." The group chat exploded. Within minutes, 6 other neighbors had chimed in with similar stories. Brenda had apparently gone on a rampage through the neighborhood during the outage, confiscating items she deemed safety hazards. One person had lost a camping stove. Another had a generator unplugged and removed from their garage. Someone else reported that Brenda had taken their battery-powered radio. "This is insane," wrote Jennifer Murphy from Oak Street. "She has no right to take our property." I called the police again. This time, with multiple reports of theft, they seemed more interested. A different dispatcher took my information and said she would have an officer stop by my house within the hour. Officer David Reynolds arrived 45 minutes later, a middle-aged cop with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I invited him in and offered coffee, which he gratefully accepted. "So walk me through what happened," he said, pulling out a notepad. I explained the entire situation, showing him the community group chat with all the other reports. He scrolled through, his expression growing more serious. "And you said this was your HOA president, Brenda Patterson. She lives over on Birch Lane." The house with the elaborate garden and the stone fountain in front. I know the one. He sighed. Here is the situation. Technically, what she did is theft. She took your property without permission and without legal authority. HOAs do not have the right to enter homes and confiscate items, emergency or not. So you can get my heater back. I am going to go talk to Miss Patterson. If she has all these items, I will strongly suggest she return them. If she refuses, we can discuss pressing charges, but I want to try to resolve this civilly first. I appreciate that. He finished his coffee and headed out. I watched from my window as he drove down the street toward Brenda's house. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Officer Reynolds. Mr. Greenfield, can you come down to Miss Patterson's house? Bring any documentation you have about your space heater, like a receipt or manual. Why? What is going on? Just come down. And maybe contact your other neighbors who reported missing items. Tell them to bring proof of ownership. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. I texted the group chat, then grabbed the box my space heater had come in, which still had the receipt stapled to it, and walked down to Brenda's house. 2 police cars were now parked in her driveway. Officer Reynolds met me at the door. "Come with me to the garage," he said. I followed him around the side of the house. The garage door was open, and what I saw inside made me stop dead in my tracks. The space was packed with stuff. Not just my space heater and the items Brenda had confiscated last night. There were dozens of boxes, bags, and containers filled with all kinds of household items. I saw kitchen appliances, tools, electronics, furniture, decorations, and more. It looked like a storage unit or a hoarder's collection. "What is all this?" I asked. "That is what we are trying to figure out," Officer Reynolds said. "Miss Patterson claims everything here was confiscated for HOA violations over the past several months. I need you to look around and see if anything besides your space heater belongs to you." I walked through the garage, stunned. Then I saw it. On a shelf near the back, I spotted my battery-powered leaf blower, the one I thought I had misplaced back in October. "That is mine," I said, pointing. "I thought I lost it." "You sure?" "Positive. See that blue tape on the handle? I put that there to mark it. My initials are under it." We checked. Sure enough, AG was written in Sharpie under the tape. Other neighbors started arriving. Marcus came and immediately identified a wheelbarrow and a set of socket wrenches. Teresa found her lanterns, plus a decorative garden gnome she thought had been stolen. Jennifer discovered an entire box of Christmas decorations she believed her ex-husband had taken during their divorce. "How long has this been going on?" Marcus asked, looking around in disbelief. "That is what we need to determine," said a second officer I did not recognize. "Miss Patterson is inside. She is claiming everything here was properly confiscated according to HOA rules." "This is not confiscation," I said. "This is theft. Multiple counts." We spent the next 2 hours identifying our property. Officer Reynolds took detailed notes, photographing each item with its owner. By the time we finished, we had identified over 40 items belonging to residents of Riverside Estates, and that was just what we could prove. There were at least 100 more items in that garage that no one had claimed yet. Brenda finally emerged from her house, her husband Walter trailing behind her looking mortified. She had clearly been crying, her makeup smeared, but her jaw was set in that stubborn way I recognized. "I did nothing wrong," she announced to everyone. "Every single item here was confiscated legally according to HOA bylaws. You all violated community standards, and I was doing my job protecting property values." "Brenda, honey, maybe we should call a lawyer," Walter said quietly. She whirled on him. "I do not need a lawyer. I did not commit any crimes." Officer Reynolds stepped forward. Miss Patterson, I have multiple residents here who are positively identifying their property. Property that was taken from their homes without permission and without proper legal authority. That is theft. It is enforcement. HOAs do not have the authority to enter private property and take items. Even with bylaws, those bylaws would be illegal and unenforceable. The board approved my actions. Does the board know about all this? I asked, gesturing to the packed garage. She hesitated. That tiny pause told me everything. You have been doing this alone, haven't you? Marcus said. The board has no idea. I am the president. I have the authority to enforce rules without consulting them on every minor violation. Minor. Teresa's voice was shaking with anger. You stole from us. You came into our homes and took our belongings. Officer Reynolds held up his hand. Everyone calm down. Miss Patterson, I am placing you under arrest for multiple counts of theft. You have the right to remain silent. I watched as he read her rights and placed her in handcuffs. She was still protesting, insisting she had done nothing wrong, that we were all ungrateful residents who did not appreciate her dedication to the community. Walter stood there looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. What happens now? I asked the second officer. We will process everything in the garage as evidence. You all will need to come down to the station and file formal reports. After that, we will see what the prosecutor wants to do. The power came back on around 3 that afternoon. I returned home with my space heater and leaf blower, still processing everything that had happened. My phone would not stop buzzing with messages from neighbors. The community group chat had turned into a full-scale investigation as people started going through old HOA correspondence, trying to figure out when Brenda's behavior had crossed from annoying to criminal. Over the next few days, the story got even more complicated. It turned out that Brenda had been systematically entering homes when residents were at work, using her HOA position to justify it. Some people had given her keys for legitimate reasons, like accepting deliveries or checking on repairs, and she had made copies. Others she had simply walked into through unlocked doors. A few she had accessed through garage codes that were in HOA records for emergency purposes. The items in her garage dated back at least 8 months. She had started small, taking minor things that people might not notice right away. A garden tool here, some decorations there. But it had escalated. She was taking more valuable items more frequently. Some of it she had apparently sold, according to police investigation of her online marketplace accounts. They found evidence that she had made over $5,000 selling stolen property. Walter filed for divorce within a week. He claimed he had no idea what Brenda was doing. The garage had always been her space, and she told him the items were donations for charity drives. He seemed genuinely shocked and horrified when the truth came out. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and immediately removed Brenda from her position. They issued a formal apology to all residents and announced they were doing a complete review of all policies and bylaws. Frank Morrison, the vice president, took over as interim president. I want to apologize to all of you, Frank said during the meeting. We trusted Brenda and clearly did not provide adequate oversight. This is a massive failure on our part. Did you know she had keys to people's houses? Someone asked. No, absolutely not. The board never authorized that. We are changing all our procedures immediately. I attended the meeting but mostly stayed quiet. I just wanted my life to go back to normal. But it was hard to feel secure in my home knowing that someone had been entering it without permission for months. Marcus caught up with me after the meeting. Hey, you okay? Yeah, just processing. I started changing all my locks today. Cameras too. I am putting up security cameras everywhere. That is probably smart. You should do the same. Who knows if she made copies of copies? He was right. Over the next week, I had every lock in my house changed. I installed a Ring doorbell and security cameras covering my front door, back door, and garage. It felt paranoid, but after what happened, paranoia seemed justified. The police investigation continued to expand. Detectives went through every item in Brenda's garage, photographing and cataloging everything. They reached out to all Riverside Estates residents, asking people to review the inventory and see if they recognized anything. More items were claimed. A few residents realized things had been stolen that they had never even noticed were missing. Detective Sarah Martinez was assigned as the lead investigator. She called me in for a formal interview about 3 weeks after the initial incident. Walk me through your interactions with Miss Patterson over the time you lived in Riverside Estates, she said. I thought back. From the day I moved in, she was difficult. Always finding violations, always threatening fines. But I thought that was just her personality. I never suspected she was actually committing crimes. When do you think she took your leaf blower? October. Mid-October. I had used it that weekend, left it in my garage. When I went to get it the following weekend, it was gone. I thought maybe I had left it at my parents' house or something. Were there any other items you are now realizing might have been taken? I paused. Maybe. I had a drill that went missing. And some camping equipment, but I move around a lot, so I just figured I had misplaced things. We found a drill with the initials AG on it, Blue DeWalt. That is mine. She made a note. Miss Patterson kept detailed records, believe it or not. She had a notebook logging every item she took, with dates and justifications. She genuinely believed she was doing her job. That is insane. Mental health evaluation is pending, but from a legal standpoint, she knew she was taking property that did not belong to her, so intent is established. The case moved slowly through the court system. Brenda was charged with multiple felony counts of theft and burglary. Her lawyer tried to argue that she had been acting in good faith as an HOA president, but the prosecution had too much evidence. The notebook Detective Martinez mentioned laid everything out in Brenda's own handwriting. I saw Brenda one more time before the trial. I was leaving the grocery store, and she was in the parking lot, looking haggard and thin. She had aged years in just a few months. When she saw me, she walked over. "Adam, please, I need to talk to you." I considered getting in my car and driving away, but something in her expression stopped me. "What? I am sorry. I know you probably do not believe me, but I am. I was trying to help. I just wanted the neighborhood to be perfect. I wanted everyone to follow the rules so our property values would stay high." "You stole from us, Brenda." I know I did. But in my mind, I was protecting the community. Every item I took was a violation, every single one. I documented it all. I was going to give everything back once people paid their fines and promised to follow the guidelines. "You sold some of the stuff. The police found the records." She looked away. "Walter stopped giving me allowance money. He said I spent too much. I had expenses. I was just trying to make some cash to cover things. By selling our property." I know how it sounds. I just kept thinking if I could make the neighborhood perfect, if I could get everyone in line, then the board would see how good I was at my job. Then everyone would respect me. Looking at her standing there, defeated and desperate, I felt an unexpected wave of pity. Not enough to forgive her, but enough to see her as a person rather than just the villain in my story. "You need help, Brenda. Professional help." My lawyer said the same thing. "I'm seeing a therapist now. She says I have control issues and anxiety and maybe some other things." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out being an HOA president was the worst thing for someone like me." I hope you get the help you need, but what you did was wrong, really wrong. People felt violated. I felt violated. I know. I will never forgive myself." She turned and walked away, getting into an old Honda that I recognized as Walter's car. She must have lost the Lexus in the divorce. The trial happened in September, nearly 9 months after the ice storm. Most of us did not attend, but Marcus went and reported back. Brenda pleaded guilty to 15 felony counts in exchange for a lighter sentence. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 months, plus restitution to all victims and mandatory psychiatric treatment. She cried during sentencing, Marcus told me. Said she was sorry over and over. The judge was not sympathetic. He said she had violated the basic trust of a community and used her position to prey on her neighbors. 3 years seems light for everything she did. The prosecutor said they could have pushed for more, but given her mental health issues and lack of prior record, they took the plea deal. Plus, everyone is getting their stuff back or getting compensated, so there was that. Life in Riverside Estates slowly returned to normal. Frank Morrison proved to be a much more reasonable HOA president. He pushed through major reforms limiting what the HOA could enforce and creating an appeals process for any fines. He also instituted strict rules about board members accessing private property. No one was ever allowed to enter a home without the owner present, period. I kept my security cameras up. I never felt quite the same about my house, knowing someone had been coming in when I was not there. But time helped. I started dating someone, Victoria Ellis, who lived in a neighboring development. She thought the whole story was crazy when I told her about it. I always thought HOAs were annoying, but I never imagined they could be actually dangerous, she said over dinner one night. Neither did I. I just thought Brenda was a busybody who took her job too seriously. How are you doing with it now? The violation of privacy and everything, I considered. Better. I still check my cameras obsessively, and I always lock every door and window even when I am home, but the fear has faded some. That is good. She reached across the table and took my hand. You went through something traumatic. It is okay to still be processing it. Victoria and I got serious pretty quickly. She spent more and more time at my place, even though she kept her own townhouse. Having someone else in the house helped me feel safer. It was harder for the anxious part of my brain to imagine intruders when I was not alone. About a year after the sentencing, I got a letter in the mail. The return address was from the correctional facility where Brenda was incarcerated. My first instinct was to throw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was handwritten, neat, careful cursive on lined paper. Dear Adam, I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing to you and several other residents to apologize again for my actions. My therapist suggested I write these letters as part of my treatment. I want you to know that I understand now that what I did was wrong, not just against the rules wrong, but morally wrong. I violated your privacy and your trust. I stole from you. No amount of HOA bylaws or good intentions can justify that. I have been doing a lot of work on myself here. I am learning about why I needed so much control, why I could not let go of tiny imperfections, why I escalated when I should have stopped. I am not making excuses. Nothing I learned changes what I did, but I am trying to be better. I am trying to understand myself so I never hurt anyone like this again. I do not expect you to forgive me. I have not forgiven myself, but I wanted you to know that I am sorry and that I think about what I did every day. I hope you are doing well and that you can eventually move past what I put you through. Sincerely, Brenda Patterson. I read the letter twice, then showed it to Victoria. What do you think? She asked. I think she means it. I think she is genuinely sorry. Are you going to write back? No, I do not want contact with her, but I am glad she is working on herself. I filed the letter away in a drawer and did not think much about it after that. Life moved forward. Victoria and I got engaged. I got a promotion at work. The Riverside Estates HOA continued functioning smoothly under Frank's leadership, focusing on actual community needs rather than petty violations. Brenda was released after serving 16 months. I did not see her, but I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to Columbus to live with her sister. Walter had remarried and moved away. The house on Birch Lane sold quickly to a young family with 2 kids. I saw Marcus at a neighborhood barbecue one summer evening, a couple of years after everything had happened. "You ever think about it anymore?" he asked, flipping burgers on his grill. "The whole Brenda situation." "Sometimes. Usually when I am checking my security cameras before bed." Victoria makes fun of me for it. I still check mine too. My wife says I am paranoid. "We have earned the right to be a little paranoid," he laughed. "True. Hey, did you hear they found more of her victims?" "What?" "Yeah, Frank told me. Some people from her previous neighborhood reached out to the police after reading about the case. She apparently pulled similar stuff there, just never got caught. Smaller scale." "Wow, so this was a pattern." "Seems like it." The prosecutor considered adding charges but decided not to since she was already convicted and serving time. I shook my head. I wonder how many times she got away with it. Probably a lot, until she escalated too far with us. Victoria came over and looped her arm through mine. "What are you two looking so serious about?" "Just rehashing old war stories," Marcus said. "The HOA thing." "Always the HOA thing," I said. She squeezed my arm. "Well, I am glad it all worked out, and I am glad we found a house that is not in an HOA. Victoria and I had just closed on a place in a different part of Cincinnati. An older neighborhood with no homeowners association, no rules about garbage cans or holiday decorations, no one with the authority to enter my property or tell me what I could do with it. "Amen to that," Marcus said, raising his beer. We toasted to freedom from HOAs, and as silly as it seemed, it felt genuine. That experience with Brenda had taught me that rules and regulations, even well-intentioned ones, could be weaponized by the wrong person. Power without accountability was dangerous, even in something as mundane as a homeowners association. The criminal case officially closed about 3 years after the ice storm. All restitution had been paid, all property returned or compensated. Brenda completed her parole requirements and, as far as I knew, was living quietly in Columbus working at a bookstore. I had no desire to reach out or learn more about her life. That chapter was closed. I ran into Detective Martinez at a coffee shop one morning. She remembered me immediately. "Adam Greenfield, right? The space heater case." "That is me." "How are you doing?" "Good, really good. Getting married next month. Congratulations. That case was one of the weirdest I ever worked. Woman genuinely thought she was doing the right thing while committing dozens of felonies." "Do you think she really changed?" Martinez considered. "I think she understands what she did was wrong. Whether she has actually changed deep down, who knows? People are complicated. But she served her time and completed her treatment. That is all we can ask for from the system." "I guess so." "You ever worry about her coming back?" "Not really. I do not live in Riverside Estates anymore, moving next month to a place with no HOA." Martinez laughed. "Smart move. I tell people all the time, be careful with HOAs. Most are fine, but all it takes is one person with too much power and not enough oversight. Learned that lesson the hard way." We chatted for a few more minutes before going our separate ways. As I walked back to my car, I thought about how much had changed since that January night when Brenda knocked on my door. I had been so focused on staying warm, so annoyed by her intrusion. I had no idea I was in the middle of something much bigger. The experience changed how I thought about community living, about rules and authority, about trusting the systems we put in place. It made me more cautious, but also more appreciative of genuine community. The neighbors who had rallied together, who had supported each other through the investigation and trial, who had pushed for real reform in the HOA, they were the real community. Not the bylaws or the regulations or the association itself. Victoria and I got married that fall. It was a small ceremony at a park overlooking the Ohio River. Marcus and his wife came, along with several other friends from Riverside Estates. Frank Morrison gave a toast at the reception, joking that he was glad to see me escape HOA jurisdiction. "Although you are welcome back to visit any time," he added. "Just do not leave your garbage cans out too long." Everyone laughed. We could laugh about it now, though at the time nothing had been funny. During our honeymoon in Colorado, Victoria and I hiked through Rocky Mountain National Park. Standing at the top of a peak, looking out over the vast wilderness, she turned to me. "You seem lighter, happier." "I feel it. I think I was carrying around a lot of stress and anxiety from the whole Brenda thing. I did not realize how much it was affecting me. And now I am just glad to move forward. New house, new start, married to you. Life is good." "It is," she agreed. We stood there for a while, breathing the thin mountain air, appreciating the moment. The past was behind us. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility. When we returned home, moving day was only a week away. I packed up my house in Riverside Estates with mixed feelings. Despite everything that had happened, I had good memories there too. Barbecues with Marcus, neighbors helping each other shovel snow, community garage sales and holiday parties. Brenda's actions had cast a shadow over all of it, but they had not erased the good parts. The new owners of my house were a couple in their 60s downsizing from a larger home. I met them during the final walkthrough. "Everything looks great," the husband said. "We are excited to move in." "It is a good neighborhood," I said. "The HOA is solid now, much better than it used to be. We heard there was some trouble a few years ago. There was, but they fixed the problems, put in better oversight, clearer rules. Frank Morrison is a good president." The wife looked relieved. "Good to know. We were worried after hearing the stories." "I would not worry. Lightning does not strike twice." I hoped that was true. For their sake and for everyone still living in Riverside Estates, Victoria and I settled into our new home quickly. The neighborhood welcomed us warmly. Our next-door neighbors were a retired couple who brought over a casserole the day we moved in. Across the street was a family with 3 kids who immediately invited us to their daughter's birthday party. It felt like a real community without any of the forced compliance. I still kept my security cameras. Old habits die hard, but I did not check them obsessively anymore. The anxiety faded as months passed without incident. Our home was our own, and no one had any authority to enter it or dictate what we did with it. About 6 months after we moved, I got an email from Frank Morrison. The HOA board was organizing a neighborhood reunion of sorts, a celebration of the community's resilience and recovery. They wanted to honor the neighbors who had stood together during the crisis. "You should go," Victoria said when I showed her the invitation. "You think?" "Yeah, it could be good closure. Plus, I would like to see this infamous neighborhood." We attended the event on a Saturday afternoon in May. The Riverside Estates clubhouse was decorated with balloons and banners. A DJ played music while kids ran around the playground. Tables were loaded with food and drinks. It felt festive and warm. Marcus spotted us immediately and came over with his family. "You made it. Would not miss it." He introduced me to his kids, who I had only met briefly before. We caught up on life, jobs, family. It felt good. Normal. Frank Morrison gave a speech about community and resilience. He acknowledged what had happened without dwelling on it, instead focusing on how the neighborhood had come together and emerged stronger. We learned important lessons, he said. About oversight and accountability. About the difference between rules that serve the community and rules that control it. About trusting but verifying. And most importantly, about how a real community supports its members rather than policing them. Everyone applauded. I found myself applauding too. It was a good speech, and he was right. Teresa Williams came up to me later. "Adam, I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For calling the police that first night. If you had not, who knows how long Brenda would have kept stealing from us." "You stood up when it mattered." "I just wanted my heater back," she laughed. "Well, your desire for warmth saved us all." The party continued into the evening. As the sun set and string lights flickered on around the clubhouse patio, I stood with Victoria watching neighbors laugh and talk and enjoy each other's company. "This is nice," she said. "It is. I am glad we came." "Do you ever regret buying here, even after everything?" I thought about it. "No. I mean, what happened was terrible, but it also taught me a lot about standing up for myself, about community, about how to recognize when something is wrong and do something about it. Plus, you got me out of it." I looked at her, confused. "How did you get that math?" "If you had not gone through that whole ordeal, you would not have been so adamant about finding a non-HOA house. And I would not have agreed to look at that house 3 doors down from mine. And we would not have run into each other at the open house." She was right. We had met at an open house for a property we both ended up not buying. But the meeting led to coffee, which led to dinner, which led to everything else. "So you are saying I should thank Brenda?" "Absolutely not. That woman is a criminal, but sometimes good things come from bad situations." I pulled her close. "I can accept that." We left the party around 9, saying goodbye to Marcus and Frank and all the neighbors who had become friends through adversity. Driving away from Riverside Estates for what might be the last time, I felt a sense of peace. That chapter of my life was fully closed now. The wounds had healed. The lessons had been learned. The space heater that started it all sat in our basement storage now, retired from active duty. I had considered throwing it out several times, but Victoria insisted we keep it. "It is historical," she said. "The space heater that brought down an HOA tyrant. That is dramatic. It is accurate, so it stayed, a relic of a strange and difficult time. Every once in a while, when winter came and the power flickered during a storm, I would think about that January night. The knock on the door. Brenda's determined face. The absurdity of arguing over a heater during an ice storm. The shock of discovering her garage full of stolen property. It seemed almost surreal now, like something that happened to someone else. But the cameras on my doors and the careful way I locked everything at night reminded me it was real. It happened. I lived through it. We all did. Brenda Patterson never contacted me again after that one letter. I heard occasional updates through the grapevine, always secondhand. She was doing okay. She had stayed out of trouble. She was working on herself. I hoped it was all true. I did not wish her harm. I just wanted her to stay far away from any position of authority over other people. Years passed. Victoria and I had a daughter. Life filled with the beautiful mundane chaos of parenthood. The Brenda incident became a story I told at parties, a cautionary tale that people found both entertaining and horrifying. "Your HOA president stole your space heater," people would say, incredulous, and about 100 other things from the neighborhood. That is insane. It really was. But with each telling, it felt more distant. A thing that happened once, a long time ago, to a younger version of myself who lived in a different house in a different neighborhood. My daughter grew up in a home with no HOA, with parents who valued freedom and privacy, who taught her that rules should serve people rather than control them. When she asked about the security cameras that still monitored our doors, I told her a simplified version of the story. "Someone once came into our old house without permission," I said, "so now we make sure we know who comes to our doors." "That is smart," she said. "We thought so." She accepted it and moved on to her next question the way kids do. No trauma, no fear. Just a simple fact of her world that made sense to her. That felt like the truest measure of healing. The past no longer controlled the present. It informed it, shaped some decisions, influenced some habits, but it did not define us anymore. I ran into Walter Patterson once, years after the divorce. It was at a hardware store in Mason, Ohio. I almost did not recognize him. He looked older but also somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. "Adam," he said, clearly debating whether to acknowledge me. "Walter, how are you?" "Good." "Really good, actually. Remarried, living up in Loveland now, I am glad. I wanted to apologize for everything, for what Brenda did. I know it is not my fault, but I still feel like I should have known, should have stopped it." "You could not have known. She hid it well, I guess, still." "I am sorry you went through that. I appreciate that. How is she doing?" "I do not know. We do not talk. Clean break was better for both of us." He paused. "I heard she is doing okay though, staying out of trouble." "Good." We stood there awkwardly for a moment before Walter said, "Well, I should let you go. Take care, Adam." "You too, Walter." Watching him walk away, I felt the last little bit of anger and resentment I had been carrying dissolve. Everyone involved in that mess had moved on. Life had continued for all of us. The Riverside Estates, HOA, continued operating under much stricter guidelines and oversight. Frank Morrison eventually stepped down and a younger couple took over leadership. By all accounts, they were fair and reasonable, focused on maintaining common areas and organizing community events rather than enforcing petty rules. Marcus sent me updates occasionally. "New HOA president just organized a neighborhood yard sale. Very chill. You would have liked her." Sounds like a different world from the Brenda days. Night and day, man. Night and day. I was genuinely happy for them. They deserved a functional HOA after what they went through. Everyone did. My own relationship with homeowners associations remained permanently skeptical. When friends asked for advice about buying in HOA neighborhoods, I always gave them the same warning. Read everything carefully, meet the board members, talk to current residents, and remember that bylaws are only as reasonable as the people enforcing them. One bad HOA president can make your life miserable, I would say, speaking from experience, very much so. Some listened. Some ignored the advice and moved into HOA communities anyway. Most of them were fine. The Brenda Pattersons of the world were rare, thankfully. But they existed, and being aware of that possibility was important. The legal reforms that came out of Brenda's case had wider impact than I realized at the time. Ohio passed new legislation clarifying HOA authority and establishing better oversight mechanisms. It became much harder for board members to abuse their positions. The case was cited in legal journals and HOA management seminars as an example of what happens when unchecked authority meets mental instability. Detective Martinez, who I still ran into occasionally around Cincinnati, told me the case changed how police departments handled HOA disputes. "We take complaints more seriously now," she said. "Used to be we would blow them off as civil matters. But after your case, we realized that sometimes what looks like an HOA dispute is actually a crime. We investigate more thoroughly." I am glad something good came from it. Multiple somethings. You helped a lot of people by standing up to her. I had never thought of it that way. In my mind, I had just been trying to get my space heater back. But maybe that was how most changes happened. Someone encountered an injustice and refused to accept it, and that small act of resistance rippled outward. As I write this now, almost a decade after that January ice storm, I can look back on the whole experience with something approaching gratitude. Not gratitude for what Brenda did, obviously, but gratitude for what I learned about resilience, community, and standing up for what is right even when it seems awkward or difficult. I learned that authorities are not always right just because they are authorities, that bylaws and rules are not inherently good or necessary. That community is built by people choosing to support each other, not by forcing compliance through threats and fines. I learned that theft is theft, regardless of who commits it or what justification they offer. That mental illness can explain behavior without excusing it. That accountability matters, even when it is hard. Most importantly, I learned that home is not just a building you own or rent. It is a place where you should feel safe and secure, where no one has the right to enter without permission, where you control your own space and your own life. Anything that violates that feeling of security and autonomy is wrong, full stop. The space heater still sits in our basement. My daughter, now 10, asked about it last winter. "Why do we keep this old heater if we never use it?" "It is sentimental," I said. "A heater is sentimental." Victoria laughed. "Your dad has a very specific relationship with that heater." "It saved my life once," I said dramatically. "Dad, you are so weird." "Probably, but I am keeping the heater." She rolled her eyes and went back to her homework. Victoria squeezed my shoulder. "You really are keeping that thing forever, aren't you?" "Absolutely. When I die, I am putting in my will that it goes to her. She is going to put you in a terrible nursing home." "Worth it." We laughed, and life went on, ordinary and beautiful and blessedly free from HOA drama. Sometimes I drive past Riverside Estates, taking the long way home from work just to see the old neighborhood. It looks peaceful, well-maintained, the kind of place where young families start their lives and retirees downsize to spend their golden years. The house on Birch Lane where Brenda lived has been renovated. New owners added a beautiful garden and painted the shutters a cheerful yellow. The garage where all those stolen items were stored is probably full of normal garage things now. Bikes and lawn equipment and holiday decorations. No evidence remains of what happened there. Time and new ownership have erased it all, which is probably for the best. The neighborhood deserves to move on without being haunted by its past. I moved on too. We all did. But we did not forget. The lessons remained. The awareness stayed sharp. And somewhere in my basement, a small ceramic space heater sits on a shelf, silent testimony to the time an HOA president went too far, and an entire community stood up to say enough. That heater kept me warm through one cold night. But the experience that followed taught me that real warmth comes from community built on respect and trust, not control and compliance. And that lesson has stayed with me every day since, warming me from the inside out in ways no space heater ever could.